Welcome to the Know It's Some podcast, bringing you the widest variety of conversational interviews for a well-rounded perspective on life. Because while it's true nobody likes a know-it-all, it's also good to know it's some. Here's your host, Steve Platt.
That's right. Welcome back to the Know It's Some podcast. I'm your host, Steve Platt. And before I introduce this week's guest, I'd like to remind our listeners that this upcoming Saturday is the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and Flight 93. It's a particularly difficult anniversary, and while I ask you to continue to keep the Afghan veterans that I mentioned last week in your prayers, I'd like you to also remember all those who were directly affected, not just those that served in the War on Terror, but all those directly affected because they lost loved ones on that fateful day 20 years ago. Keep them in your prayers. I particularly would like for you guys to please look up the story of a good friend of mine. I met him as a fellow veteran. We shared stories from two very different wars. He had served in special forces in Vietnam. I served in Afghanistan, and we became good friends, and then I learned about his story and his son's story, and honestly and truly, it was too difficult for him to come here on the podcast, but he does want his son's story told and his story told. He's the co-founder of the 9/11 Tribute Center in New York. He's also a past president of the 9/11 Families Association, has done a lot of work with the museum there, and he was one of 8 dads to go to the site for 9 months to help with the recovery effort, and the only one whose son's body was recovered. His son's turnout coat and helmet are on display there in the museum there at Ground Zero. And quite frankly, I can't think of a more remarkable man, and just honored to call him a friend. I would really like for you guys to please look him up so that his son's story is continuing to be told and remembered, and that his son's legacy does not go forgotten. He mentioned to me that recently he's come across young folks who don't know much about 9/11 because it's not required to be taught in schools in all states. I believe there's something like 14 states that don't require it to be taught. And so if you could just please look up his story this weekend, and as you remember the events of 9/11 and where you were that day, keep those families in your prayers. His name is Lee Ielpi. Ielpi spelled I-E-L-P-I. And I know that we'll all this Saturday be saying a prayer for both him and his son, Jonathan. All right, folks, this week's guest is Florida State Representative Daniel Perez. Representative Perez serves Florida's 116th district, and he has been elected by his peers to become the Speaker of the House beginning in 2024. Regardless of where you stand politically, I know you'll enjoy this interview with Daniel. Sheds a lot of light on what goes on there in Tallahassee. I wish more elected officials had his integrity, and I'm proud to call him my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Daniel Perez to the show. Hi, Daniel. How you doing? Welcome to the Know It's Some podcast.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being on. I appreciate it, man. You and I both went to the same high school. You've gone on to do bigger and better things, and now you are representing Florida's 116th district. And the reason why I wanted to have you on is, I'm sure you're aware, politicians can get a bad rap now and then, but you represent, you exemplify what civil service should be. The stuff that you've done for your district is incredible, and it's a true honor to have you on. What made you get into civil service? What interested you about politics growing up?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me, man. And you're right. Sometimes elected officials do get a bad rap. And maybe what people see on TV in D.C. may or may not be true. I mean, I wouldn't know. I'm not in D.C. I'm in Tallahassee.
Right.
But it is important for people to know, man, what goes on in Tallahassee is actually a very much bipartisan effort, man. Republicans and Democrats get along. We agree on probably 90% of the issues. So Tallahassee is actually a breath of fresh air, man. But
phenomenal.
As far as me getting into this, I mean, I went to Columbus here in District 116, where we went to high school, and I have my house here with my wife and my kids, and this is where, I'm going to raise my family. And I always grew up in the world of advocacy, whether it was through student government at St. Teresa or at Columbus. I was my class president. I went to Florida State after. Then I went to Loyola. for law school in New Orleans, and I was chosen to be the law school president while I was there. But I've enjoyed being able to advocate for those that I care about, and came back to Miami, began to work as an attorney, and I had gotten a call from, at the time, was the incumbent, Jose Felix Diaz. He's a St. Brendan grad from right next to Columbus, and he said, this is in your blood, man. This is in your soul to serve the people. You should think about it. And I was 30 years old at the time.
Wow.
And I'm gonna be honest, man. Running for office, it's probably better suited for people that are, I'd say, starting mid 40s, because you got to have a certain amount of life experiences that maybe at 30 years old you don't have.
Right.
And I didn't have it at the time, but nonetheless, it took a risk, and we went all in. We had a special election in 2017. I was an underdog. Ran against a gentleman, nice guy, a friend of mine today, who was endorsed by Jeb Bush, the Speaker of the House, Congressman. I mean, everyone. But in true Columbus fashion, man, we got everyone together. We knocked on doors, my family, my friends. We went all in, and we were able to win that special election in 2017, and that's what kind of got everything started.
That's really incredible. You mentioned that you went to law school in New Orleans at Loyola. With what has happened just now with Hurricane Ida, reminiscent of what happened with Hurricane Katrina, I imagine several years before you started law school. I mean, is there a certain part of that city that's still home to you? I know law school is not the most fun time in the world, but is that something that's near and dear to you? Do you feel for the people in New Orleans in a special way from having been there?
Yeah, totally. And I still have a ton of friends there, and I've been in touch with them nonstop. Katrina was a couple years before I got to New Orleans. But, the one lesson that people from New Orleans, people from Louisiana learned from Katrina was to evacuate. And I will tell you, a large majority of New Orleans left New Orleans before this storm. And a lot of them are actually here in Florida. Destin, I'm sure right now is full of LSU Tigers, because I know a lot of them left New Orleans, and I'm glad they did, man. They won't have power there for several weeks. I had a buddy of mine, his dad stayed behind in Jefferson Parish, which is right next to Orleans Parish, and he's telling me the water pump got busted. So restrooms aren't working, faucets aren't working. I mean, it's bad right now in New Orleans, but I stay in touch with them, and they know that anything that we can do here in Florida as a legislature, and our governor has said the same. We're here to serve, man, and make sure we can help them out. And I know we've sent several task force, Miami specifically, out to Louisiana and Mississippi to make sure that we can help them out as much as we can.
You really do come through in times of need. With the pandemic over the last year and a half, I know that you've done quite a bit for the people in your district. I mean, I've seen you working food drives. I've seen you doing all sorts of things. Has it been kind of a bizarre time to be in a position of leadership during such a, I know it's cliche to say unprecedented times, but really and truly, I mean, there's no real other way to describe it. This is really unprecedented. Is it bizarre for you to be in leadership during a time like this?
It is, man. It is. It's, when you get into office, you have all these great ideas that you want to finally implement. For me, it was special education. You say, I want to help special education. I want to help the workforce. I want to help X, Y, Z, the environment. You have all these ideas, and then all of a sudden COVID comes out of nowhere. The economy shuts down. Funds begin to drop. Federal government has to begin to send money to some of these states. And so all of a sudden your priorities have changed. People are out of jobs. If there's no jobs, there's no food on the table. And so we have completely changed our minds over the last couple of years now because of COVID, to make sure that people have the bare necessities. And when we got into office in 2017, those weren't concerns of ours. We went from having a food drive, maybe 2 to 3 times a year. We were having them every single week in my district for months. For months we had it every single week. And these were people that they were driving by and they were so thankful for the food that they were getting. Feeding South Florida was helping us out with. So, yeah, you're right. It was definitely a change of mindset, but one that was appreciated, because at the end of the day, when you run for office, that's what you're getting elected to do, to serve. And we've been able to do so, and we still do today. My office answers unemployment calls and everything under the sun that you can imagine has to do with COVID, because the unfortunate reality is COVID is here to stay. It's not going anywhere, so we have to deal with it.
Yeah, and we have to learn to live with it and cope with it and move forward. I think you guys are well positioned to help people do that, because the truth of it is that it's not an easy thing to do, and sometimes we do need to reach out to our elected officials such as yourself and see what resources are out there to help us, move forward, what information, right, stuff like that. I noticed that you served on a bunch of different subcommittees and committees there in Tallahassee. Is there an area where you were let's put it this way, surprised that that would be so important and such a big part of your time in office? Maybe a committee that you joined that you learned a lot from, and maybe opened your eyes to certain things.
Yeah, well, look, I'll tell you the one. I mean, I'm a city guy just like you, man. We grew up in the city, quite frankly, the best city in the world, in my opinion, Miami. So
Oh yeah.
sometimes the agricultural world is something that we just aren't familiar with. And I
Right.
didn't know everything that fell into that category when I first got into the house. I mean, water, clean water is such an important part of our environment and of the state of Florida. And I learned more of those functions when I got into Tallahassee. We don't notice it here because we're so busy with the day-to-day life of a city boy. But the funds that the governor and the legislature has put into the environment over the last 3 years is the highest amount of money that has ever been put up into an environmental budget in the history of the state of Florida.
Hmm.
Clean water and sanitation is something that we have worked hard on, and we had the red tide and the blue green algae that has hit us over the last couple of years, and we've been dealing with that. We put the right funds aside to attack that. Us down here in Miami, we had, Biscayne Bay get hit harder than most of the other parts of the state. So what I've definitely learned that caught me by a pleasant surprise was the importance of the agricultural committee when I got into Tallahassee.
That's phenomenal. You're right. It's not something that you think about when you come from a big metropolitan area, and yet so much of our state is an agricultural hub. And it's great that we have folks like yourself looking out for those interests. So I'm sure you're aware, not everybody is pleased by any action that you take as a politician. You're going to have a lot of people that support your decisions and your actions. And because you are a man of integrity, which is important to me as a Marine, the majority of folks out there are very happy with you. They appreciate the hard work. They appreciate the sacrifice, because it's kind of a thankless job. But then you have those naysayers that no matter what you do, they're going to be upset, right? People that just can't be pleased. And with the dawn of social media and the internet, there's trolls, there's people that get comfortable behind a keyboard. Because you are such an upstanding person, you're a family man, a husband, a father. Does that ever weigh on you? How are you able to tune out the negativity and the trolls during, let's say, a campaign or anything like that? Because I know that that's part of the territory of being a civil servant, of being in office.
Yeah, no, that's true, man. Look, if you're looking to get the pat on the back and the 100% approval, elected office is not for you. This is a job that no matter what decision you make, there are people that are going to disagree with your decision. Literally, no matter what your decision is, it can be, free cookies for every kid under 2 years old, and there will be some sort of downside that will get attacked. But that's not why you don't run for office for the pat on the back. You run because you have a set of morals, and that's the morals that you want your community to live by, because you believe that
Mm.
it's going to be for the betterment of those families that live in your community, in your district. And my wife and I and my family, we knocked on thousands of doors, and there were many times that on doors we would knock and ask for their support humbly. They would tell me no, and those are the ones that I enjoyed the most, because I'd like to understand why and what is it that I can do to gain your trust. If it's a disagreement on policy, that's fine. But I've tried to get in front of as many people as I can. I've knocked on tens of thousands of doors in my district,
Mm.
not only during campaign season. Till this day, I have a list in my car, and it's not every day, but hey, every I'd say probably 10 to 14 days, I'll take out my list and I'll knock on 25, 30 doors.
That's impressive.
And that's kind of how you keep your finger on the pulse, man, of your district, and understand what's important to them, which is usually pretty consistent down here in Miami. It's property taxes,
Hmm.
traffic, homeowners insurance. Those are the issues that are important to us down here. But staying in touch with your community is critical to being a representative. But if you think this is yeah, I guess you can get your award here and there for whatever project it is you brought back home. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, every decision you make is a tough one, and you just got to make sure that it's It's for the betterment of those around you, regardless if it's a popular or unpopular opinion. Most of the times, the unpopular ones which are the toughest, are the ones that are most necessary for your district. So it's a tough balance for sure.
That's so true, and you got to have that thick skin to understand that A, it's not personal, and B, that a lot of the people that are naysayers, right? Like they might not have a full understanding of what's going on. Like they don't have the full picture. And if they understood it all, if they understood all the dynamics and the moving parts, they might come around to understand why you made a certain decision, right? So
yeah,
that's pretty cool. For the listeners that are unaware, you've been elected by your peers to become the Speaker of the House for the state of Florida, and you'll assume that office in 2024, if I'm not mistaken.
yep.
That's a truly incredible accomplishment, but also a pretty weighty one as well. I know of a certain senator right now that used to hold that office. Has that dawned on you the weight of that and the importance of that and how incredibly special it is to become the Speaker of the House?
No, it's humbling. It's a unique opportunity. If people don't know this, if Florida were its own country, the economy, the GDP of Florida would be, I believe it's 15th in the world. If Florida were its own country, I mean, forget about just the United States being the best country in the world. If Florida was its own territory, separate from the United States, would be the 15th largest economy in the world. I mean, that's insane. So to have the opportunity to lead the state alongside the governor and the Senate is a very unique and humbling experience that, will help us in the House, God willing, but would also help Miami, to make sure that people understand they have a voice in Tallahassee. And I was elected by 26 other colleagues of mine. That's how it works in the House. The Republican caucus for that first term, that freshman session, chooses their speaker for their last term. And I mean this, I have probably the best class of Republican colleagues, and the Democrats are close to us too. They're good people, but they don't vote in this
Right.
instance. They vote at the end. And
Yep.
my peers that voted for me are honestly just gracious men and women that trusted in me, and I trust in them. And there's no decision that I don't bring them in on, that I don't ask for their opinion. Many of them are experts in their own field. We'll have one guy that's an expert on water. We'll have one person that's former law enforcement, former military. I mean, we just have people from all walks of life that kind of, when you put them all together, I think we become the best beef stew in all of Florida, man. We believe in ourselves, and I'm a lucky man to have them by my side.
Absolutely. I live over in the Sarasota Bradenton area in a
Yeah.
little town called Lakewood Ranch, and the folks from over here, Tommy Gregory and Will and whatnot. I know that Will was your opponent. I hate to say opponent, but he was the other gentleman considered for the role, right? What's amazing is that there are a lot of folks that were not initially in your camp or voting for you, and you've won them over tremendously. They speak so highly of you. You were able to kind of unite the caucus after kind of sealing that position, and I think you seem to believe that you'll be able to do the same with the Democrats because of how Tallahassee works. How important is that to have kind of a united front and get things done?
I think it's super important. If you have that separation that you guys see on TV in DC, in Tallahassee, we wouldn't get done what we get done. And Will Robinson and Tommy Gregory, and you got James Buchanan in that area.
Yep.
Three guys that are dear friends of mine. I mean, Will Robinson is one of the most fine human beings. I mean, he has a heart of gold, a true soul to serve. Just a good man. And he's been an important part of this class. So I mean, look, you guys have others in this area and in the area that you live in that are in the class after us that are also very talented. You got Fiona McFarland. I mean, you have so many great representatives in that area, but yeah, we work together, man. We work together across classes and across party lines. And I think the more important fact to point out is, even when we disagree with the Democrats, it's a respectful disagreement more often than not. Granted, you'll have your bad apples and your bad times from time to time, but more often than not, we can sit down and just say, hey, look, on this one, we're just not going to agree. There's nothing I can do to convince you to be pro-life, and there's nothing you can do to convince me to be pro-choice. We're going to move forward. If it's a federal issue or it's a state issue, putting all that aside, we try and move forward on the things that we can at least work on. Because if we don't, the only people that are at fault for that are us, and the only people that get hurt by it are the people back at home. So we try and stay away from that, and I think we do a pretty good job of that at Tallahassee.
No, absolutely. And one of the benefits of that is that in these unprecedented times, in these challenging times, we can actually move, right, to try to mitigate certain things and better other things. With that, with a united front and with the way that you've kind of been able to unify folks, what are the most important challenges to the state of Florida? What are the things that you're looking to tackle going forward? Is there anything on that bucket list?
And look, property taxes for the elderly are tough. When you get on a set income through Social Security and whatever retirement funds you have, and taxes continue to go up, but your income doesn't, because you're no longer working, that's tough, man. But if I can accomplish something with property taxes before it's my time to come home to my wife and kids in 2026, I would say I accomplished my time in the house. That's a big feat, but hey, that's what we do this for, man. To put big challenges ahead of us, and I know every day we try and figure out ways to do that. So we'll see. But for right now, our immediate goal is to make sure that Speaker Sprouse continues to succeed the way he has. He had a phenomenal session last year. And then working with Chair Renner, he is in charge of House Majority for the Republicans. And making sure that we get everyone reelected is not an easy task. And he's been trusted to lead us in that task. And I think he's going to do a phenomenal job. So that's the immediate priority, with a long-term hopeful goal for those that are in the elderly population.
Well, I really wish you the best on it. I think it's in our best interest as a state that something gets done there. I want to leave you with something kind of like lighthearted. My podcast is on a network called the Roll Up Network. It was started by a podcast called the Big Three Roll Up that's centered around football for the big three colleges in the state of Florida, which we considered to be the University of Miami, the University of Florida, and Florida State. And so they had a guy on from each. A lot of great banter. They continue it now with a podcast called the Roll Up. I got to ask you, you're a Florida State guy. I'm a University of Florida guy. What do you expect to see this year, both for the Florida State football team, and how's that game going to go between us?
Oh, look, Coach Norvell has welcomed me with open arms. Yeah, I went in to take a tour of the FSU football facility when he took over, and he gave me his cell phone number. And I was with a bunch of my buddies, a bunch of colleagues from the house, and they know how much of a Florida State football fan I am. And they told Coach Norvell, like, you just made the biggest mistake ever giving this guy your phone number. And so I check in with him from time to time. I'm a believer in Coach Norvell. He reminds me of Bobby, Coach Bowden, obviously, God rest his soul, but he created Florida State football, and I hope that Coach Norvell can take us there. I'm a patient man. We got to give him some time to rebuild and grow, but we're Florida State football, man. I think if we're not back this year, we'll be back next. But college football is cyclical, and Florida State will be back sooner rather than later. But as of right now, it looks like the other two schools are doing a little bit better than us, unfortunately.
Just at the moment, we were there a minute ago, right before Coach Mullen. So, I know how it feels. But yeah, I think Coach Norvell is a step in the right direction. Then, you mentioned Bobby passing. I've never seen a college football coach get that much love and respect from not just his own fan base, but all sorts of rival fan bases, just all across college football. People with nothing but great things to say about Coach Bobby Bowden. Do you have a particular favorite memory there at Doak Campbell? Is there a game that you remember or a season that you remember either while you were at school there or growing up?
I mean, look, man, it was after I graduated, but the 2013 national championship in Pasadena when Jameis Winston won the national championship for our team and with his teammates was a great one. But ironically, man, the one moment from college football that I remember when I was there was actually a loss. It was a 33-0 loss to Wake Forest in Doak Campbell Stadium at home, pouring rain. I was a freshman or sophomore, and I was like, damn, this just can't get any worse. But you know what, man? It's that made me appreciate 2013 so much more, because in 2005, I think it was, when we lost to Wake Forest and we got manhandled. That was a pretty bad Saturday for me and my buddies, man. So that's what I remember. But we redeemed ourselves.
Yeah, no, it's like you said, it's cyclical, right? And it's a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of heart in college football that you don't get in the pros. And, I wish you guys the best, because I think Florida football is at its best when its rivals are at their best. You know what I mean? That's when it's most fun. So I wish you guys the very best. Daniel, it's been a real pleasure having you on.
Hey, the pleasure's all mine, man.
You're welcome back on anytime. I know it's the little one's birthday today, so I hope they had an amazing birthday. Thanks so much, my friend. And best of luck in Tallahassee.
Likewise, brother. Take care.
And that'll do it for another episode of the Know It Some podcast. My thanks again to this week's guest, Daniel Perez, both for coming onto the show and for leading with integrity. We need more leaders such as yourself. I said it before, I'll say it again. Thank you so much for all that you do for your constituency there in Tallahassee. And I wish we had more elected leaders like yourself. Folks, if you haven't done so already, 5-star ranking would be the best way to support the show. You could do that at Podchaser or Apple and iTunes. Whether you're an Apple user or not, you could definitely do so at Podchaser. It's a newer platform. We don't have that many there because it's so new and we are so new to it. So that would be phenomenal. But also, we'd love those Apple, iTunes reviews and rankings. It's the best way to support the show. It helps us bring on interesting guests week in and week out. So if you love the show, go ahead, give us that 5-star ranking. But if you want the show to get even better, 5-star ranking, folks, best way to support it. Another way to do so would be to follow us on social media and like and share our posts with your friends. So whatever social media platform is your favorite, we're there at Know It Some Pod, all across social media, whether that's Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, we're there at Know It Some Pod. Go ahead and give us a follow, and you could also write us in there, with your feedback. We take feedback. We get a lot of DMs on Twitter and Instagram, but you could also email us, knowitsomepod@gmail.com. Best way to give us feedback. We love it. Folks, the support has been incredible. And right now, I'll let you know who the guest is next week. How about that? Since you hung out around to the end of the episode, I'll do what I don't normally do. Tell you the guest next week. Comedian Alex Falcone. Very, very, very funny guy. If you love the Kevin McCaffrey episode, you'll love this one. Just had a lot of fun recording it. I can't wait to release it. Stick around for it. Folks, thanks for all the support. Really, really means a lot to me. And I'll see you next week.